You can't hide your lying eyes, and your smile's a thin disguise. I thought by now you'd realize there ain't no way to hide your lying eyes. Thanks, folks, for showing up for another episode of Powerful Words with Caleb. You know who I'm talking of. And today we're going to be dealing with the subject of intelligence gone wrong or intelligence gone right for their purposes, but not for ours. What we're dealing with are these hybrid agencies that have been given the power, the full power and authority of our governments, yet they have been given contracts that allow them the capacity to have some autonomy to do what they want to do without oversight of the people. And they're given tax dollar money, taxpayer money, to actually infiltrate and subjugate our own populations. And that's just the truth of it. And so what they've done is they've had secret budgets and secret meetings and secret this and secret that. And the reason it was secret is to keep it from us. It's very apparent. And when we start talking about these agencies, we start talking about really nefarious relationships that we've seen drawn between the leaders of our governments and these secretive agencies upon which they sit as board members. And when I refer to board members, I'm referring to powerful leaders of the world. But when we start talking about Hackloyd, and Hackloyd is Holdingham Group. It includes Hackloyd, it includes Hackloyd Cyber, it includes Polaris, and what it is a broad range agency that is filled with former members of our government and the powerful elite, and it has access to top level security classified material. As well as has the capacity to propagate dark ops across borders. So very dangerous element that we've set loose, whereas our CIA is constrained to work out external to the U.S. borders and the FBI within, except for investigation purposes. We've now got these hybrid groups that can go where they need to go, do what they need to do, and persecute and prosecute and become judge, jury, and executioner along the way. And what we've seen is that this group of Hackloyd is also very rife with those folks who are good at raising money. Ambassador Sussman is one of those who sits upon Hackloyd's board. That's a very interesting proposal, imagining that our ambassador to the United Kingdom is now on the board of Hackloyd Group, and that's just it's hard to wrap your head around that, how our ambassador could be a member on the board of this group. Meet London-based Hackloyd & Company, founded by 3 former British intelligence operatives in 1995 to provide the kind of otherwise inaccessible research for which select governments and Fortune 500 corporations pay huge sums. Now, we have heard about Fusion GPS, but we do not hear about Hackloyd in the news. And let's be honest, the UK has the capacity. They are not a free country with regard to the media. They have the capacity to rein in or shut down or simply order that stories not be published on the UK news. That's not supposed to happen here, but it appears that it is happening here. Whereas Fusion GPS was created by 3 former Wall Street Journal reporters with links to the U.S. intelligence community, Hackloyd, with offices in London, New York, Singapore, Tokyo, and Sydney, was founded by an enterprising trio of former British intelligence operatives with deep connections throughout the world's official and corporate corridors of power and influence. Now, we need to also understand that London is the home of the British Empire. New York, we were a crown colony. Singapore was a crown colony. Sydney, Australia was a crown colony. Now Tokyo is left out kind of in the wind there. But it's interesting to see that these are parts of the British Empire. Hackloyd is described by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism's Henry Williams as one of the more secretive firms within the corporate investigations world and as a retirement home for ex-MI6 British foreign intelligence officers, but it now also recruits from the world of management consulting and banking. The firm's style appears to be much more in the mold of Christopher Steele dossier. Clients pay for the pages of well-sourced prose from Hackloyd's contacts across the globe, Williams wrote. Hackloyd isn't familiar to the American public, but what has become well known in the recent days is the role played by one of London's firm's most visible figures in drawing the FBI into the world of Trump-Russia collusion allegations, a world largely created by Steele in the infamous dossier bearing his name. When the drunken junior Trump foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos boasted in a London bar in May 2016 about Russian intelligence operatives peddling hacked emails that were damaging to Clinton, his most interested listener, according to the New York Times, was Alexander Downer, Australian High Commissioner to the UK. It was Downer who told the FBI of Papadopoulos' comments, which became one of the driving factors that led the FBI to an open investigation in July 2016 into Russia's attempts to disrupt election and whether any of the President Trump's associates conspired. The Times reported Downer, a longtime Aussie chum of Bill and Hillary Clinton, has been on Hackloyd's advisory board since 2008. Officially, he had to resign to his Hackloyd role in 2014, but his informal connections continued uninterrupted. The News Corp Australian network reported in January 2016 exclusive, but it can be revealed Mr. Downer has been attending client conferences and gatherings of the group, including a client cocktail soiree at the Orangery at Kensington Palace a few months ago. His attendance at that event is understood to have come days after he has also attended a 2-day country retreat at the invitation of the group, which has been involved in a number of corporate spy scandals in recent times. The News Corp's Australian network quoted an unnamed British diplomatic source explaining that Hackloyd operates in the shadows. It's not exactly open and transparent, and so any serving that's the difference serving diplomat with access to sensitive information and insight associating with the group raises a worry in Whitehall. Whitehall is the British government's equivalent to the White House. Downer's continued involvement with Hackloyd locates the shadowy operation in the world of the Clintons. As previously reported by LifeSet, it was Downer in 2006 who, as Australian Foreign Minister, signed a memorandum of understanding with Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. So now Downer has signed a memorandum of understanding in 2006 with Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. The memorandum committed $25 million from the Australian government to the Foundation for HIV and AIDS programs in China, Papua New Guinea, and Vietnam. A subsequent audit was unable to account for how those funds were spent. Earlier this year, the FBI asked retired Australian police detective Michael Smith to provide information he uncovered concerning the 2006 deal, suggesting the Bureau's investigation of the Clinton Foundation is focused on the controversy's charities, domestic and international activities. Downer is also connected to another firm of great importance in the international intelligence world. That would be China's telecommunications giant Huawei, on whose Australian board he served for several years. Beginning in 2011, U.S. intelligence experts have long described Huawei as a tool of Chinese espionage in America. But Downer is not the only Clinton fan in Hackloyd. Federal contribution records show several of the firm's U.S. representatives made large contributions to 2 of Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign organizations. Jonathan Salib of Brooklyn listed himself as a consultant, and when he made 4 contributions of $3,200 to Hillary Clinton for America, 1 contribution worth $2,350 to Hillary Victory Fund during the Democratic presidential primary. Salib also contributed to the congressional campaigns of Representative Seth Moulton, Democrats of Massachusetts, and John Lewis of Montana. Salib was formerly chief of staff for Senator Max Baucus, a Democrat of Montana. Another Hackloyd executive, Holly Evans, contributed $500 to Hillary for America the day after Salib's June 27th donation to the same Clinton campaign entity. Evans listed Rye, New York as home and described herself as Hackloyd executive. Her resume includes stints advising Vice President Dick Cheney and working on the National Security Council during the second Bush administration. The link between Clinton and the Hackloids is ironic considering the former Secretary of State's strong commitment to liberal democratic environmental causes. A third Hackloid executive, Andrew Exum of Washington, D.C., made multiple contributions to several Democratic congressional candidates, including Elisa Slotkin in Michigan and Daniel Helmer of Virginia. Exum served as U.S. Army infantry officer and as a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under then-President Barack Obama. He also has been a contributing editor of The Atlantic magazine. The link between Clinton and Hackloid is ironic, considering the former Secretary of State's strong commitment to liberal democratic environmental causes, as Hackloid's record includes being caught planting spies in Greenpeace and other environmental groups on behalf of energy giants British Petroleum and Shell. Okay, let's stop the share there. Now, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with this is the route by which they have circumvented the people. This is the route by which they have covered themselves, covered their backs, covered their money laundering, because if you use a organization that is given the capacity to hide its funding, hide its money laundering, hide its drug operations in order to conduct black operations such as the CIA or any of these entities that hide in the shadows, then that stuff may remain secret. Well, the Department of State is tied directly into all of this organic espionage going on overseas. So you can imagine why Hillary Clinton would become Secretary of State. Now let's open up another article here. Now this article comes from a robust media agency that's gotten some flack over the years, but they really are doing excellent work. And I've been trading just acquaintance emails and or I should say Twitter's messages with Chris Blackburn of Disobedient Media. So there is some I do have some insight into what they're doing because I've been watching Chris and I've been watching what they've been doing, and they really are threshing out some of this these hidden concepts that we have yet to notice. And it's really interesting to look into those things that Chris is reporting. 16 countries of the Commonwealth of Nations are Commonwealth realms. Queen Elizabeth is sovereign to each of these lands, including the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. And you notice that half of Africa is to which the Queen is sovereign. The transition of the British Empire into the Commonwealth of Nations and the Commonwealth realm is unmatched in its scope in world history, with possible exception of the transmutation of Western Roman Empire into the Roman Catholic Church. St. Augustine wrote The City of God in response to Roman public's outcry over the Visigoths' sacking of Rome in 410 AD. This book is recognized as a foundation to Western religious thought. To Augustine, the ruination of Rome as an ephemeral city of man was surmounted completely by Christianity's triumph in the form of the establishment of the eternal city of God. The concept of diocese as administrative domains within the Roman Empire preceded the term's ecclesiastical use, for after the establishment of Christianity as the official state religion of the empire in the 4th century AD, bishops and priests were placed alongside the provincial governors and bureaucrats of empire as the Western Empire withered and collapsed. All that was left was the offices of the churches. So what we're dealing with is the reality, and here is Disobedient Media backing up my continuous and persistent claims that the Roman Empire never went away. It just became an administrative body and was folded into the church and other administrative monarchies. Bear with me for a second. I feel a sneeze coming on, so I might have to turn the mic off. Okay. Let's see. The expansion and solidification of the Commonwealth of Nations as a proxy for British Empire, albeit vastly weakens in terms of British influence, thus had a model. It already had a model. It had seen Rome do the same thing. Administrative and intergovernmental duties of the Commonwealth of Nations are the responsibility of the organization secretariat, which is directed by the Secretary General. It is of interest that the former Australian High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, Alexander Downer, again, whose meeting with junior Trump campaign aide George Papadopoulos putatively began the FBI's counterintelligence probe, was unsuccessfully put forward for the position of Commonwealth Secretary General in 2015 by both British and Australian officials. Downer's title at that time was equivalent in rank to that of the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary in Commonwealth nations sharing the same monarch. Diplomatic relations between such states occur at the cabinet level. So what we're seeing is that this is a cabinet level member who has been given wide base authority and was frankly going to be the Commonwealth director, meaning that over all of those states. So interesting stuff that disobedient media is coming up with, and we need to jump down and start to realize some of the things that they're threshing out that most of the world is not yet has not yet become privy to. Thus, the primary foundation for what became a Russian collusion narrative did not involve Russia, but arose due to Britain's vision for itself. On December 8, 2015, Donald Trump, in the wake of San Bernardino terrorist attack, called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what is going on. At that time, Donald Trump opined in the status of sections of London, which the candidate stated were so radicalized the police are afraid for their lives. Britain was unified in its derision. Then Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, who had been photographed with Maltese professor Joseph Mifsud, a central figure in the collusion narrative, who may contend to be Britain's next prime minister, referred to Trump's comments as ill-informed and complete and utter nonsense. Both candidates who sought to succeed Johnson made sharper remarks. The conservative candidate, Zach Goldsmith, declared Trump to be one of the most malignant figures in politics. Sadiq Khan, Labor's candidate, who subsequently became mayor, stated Trump can't just be dismissed as a buffoon. His comments are outrageous and divisive and dangerous. I condemn them utterly and hope his campaign dies a death. Labor Party leader Jeremy Corbyn tweeted that Trump's remarks constituted an attack on democratic values. Finally, Prime Minister David Cameron, conservative, called Trump's views divisive, unhelpful, and quite simply wrong. Later, Cameron, addressing Parliament, would state that Trump's proposed Muslim ban is divisive, stupid, and wrong. If he came to visit our country, I think he would unite us all against him. Clearly, these British politicians attempted to influence America's presidential election. Their views are amplified by the mainstream media within the United States, may have exerted more influence on America's political process than did all Russian actors. However, it was Cameron's caustic judgments that were critical to the instigation and the formation of the collusion narrative. President Obama visited the United Kingdom in 2016 during a joint April 22, 2016 press conference held at 10 Downing Street with President Obama. Prime Minister Cameron was asked what American voters should do about Donald Trump. Cameron responded, "As for the American elections, I've made some comments in recent weeks and months. I don't think now is the moment to add to them or subtract from them." On May 3, 2016, George Papadopoulos, a junior Trump aide living in London, called on Prime Minister Cameron to apologize to Donald Trump, stating that such contrition would be wise and that the Prime Minister should invite the Republican candidate to the UK. These remarks were reported by British newspapers and likely constituted the fuse that ignited various elements within the intelligence policy and law enforcement establishments of Britain, Australia, and the United States. Agents. Actions within the United Kingdom and Australia purpose to subvert the Trump campaign were almost certainly staged by current or former intelligence officials. Christopher Steele, author of the Trump dossier, served with Britain's Secret Service MI6 as the agency's senior analyst for Russian affairs. Retiring from MI6 in 2009, Steele co-founded the private agency Orbis Business Intelligence Limited. Orbis sought to ape the functions and actions of established private intelligence firms headquartered in London. Hackloyd and Company, a far larger strategic intelligence and advisory firm, most probably served as the model for Steele and his partner. Hackloyd was established in 1994 by Christopher James, a man whose prior governmental service included a career in Britain's elite Special Air Service, which is part of the military, the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Hackloyd has been the subject of past controversies. James Quinn, writing in the Telegraph, noted that the firm faced controversy when it alleged to have employed an operative to infiltrate environmental groups on behalf of BP and Shell. The Scotsman newspaper published an article that may provide needed insight into Hackloyd's operations in the story Intelligence Firm Within an Air of Mystery. So what we're dealing with is this journalist, these folks are over in the UK. So what we're dealing with is now we've got a first-hand statement backing up those claims that we're making here in the United States, that this thing was a coordinated affair over there in London. And of course, it was coordinated with elements over here, but we don't know exactly where it started, but it started together, and it started on both sides of the pond. And it has ties to the oil firm, it has ties to government, it has ties to all the intelligence agencies, it has ties to these hybrid groups that have been given wide-based authority, and it has, frankly, enormous ties to the Clintons monetarily. So Christopher Steele served under Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6. The Washington Post on Friday, 6/2018, reported that Dearlove maintained a relationship with Steele after both had left Britain's spy agency. Among those who had continued to seek his expertise in Steele's former boss, Richard Dearlove, who headed MI6 from 1999 to 2004. According to the paper, Dearlove said Steele became the go-to person on Russia in the commercial sector. Following his retirement from Secret Intelligence Service, he described the reputations of Steele and his business partners, fellow intelligence veteran Christopher Burrows, as superb. Now, I'm going to make a claim now. I'm going to make an assertion. I'm going to place a hypothesis with some general backup, and that is, I believe that Christopher Steele may have been employed by Hackloyd, as Hackloyd employs 90% of their external population. They have very few folks who run in-house. I believe that perhaps Christopher Steele had been employed through Hackloyd to develop such a dossier. Now that needs to be threshed out, but that seems to be the type of relationship that has gone on. Now, whether he did develop the dossier for them or whether he was just paid by another external entity needs to be threshed out. Dearlove was also connected to Cambridge professor and reported CIA and FBI asset Stephen Halper. Both Dearlove and Halper had roles in several British national security seminars or organizations. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board wrote on May 22, 2018, that Carter Page told the paper that he, in fact, first met Stefan Halper in mid-July 2016 at a symposium at England's University of Cambridge, where Mr. Halper is an emeritus professor. Mr. Page says the invitation to that event came much earlier, the end of May or early June. Mr. Page declined to say who invited him, but says it was someone other than Mr. Halper. Mr. Halper had a central role in the symposium. The event was hosted by the Center for Research in Arts, Social Sciences, and Humanities, a Cambridge Research Institute. Another noteworthy participant was Sir Richard Dearlove. Dearlove and Halper also have lead roles in Cambridge Security Initiative, according to the CSI website. And you can read what's on the CSI website. Of note is that the last sentence of the foregoing quote confirms that Dearlove and Halper, through CSI, counted amongst their clients UK and US government agencies. Halper's name is listed beneath Dearlove's on the organizational website. A short biography notes Stefan Halper holds doctorates from both Oxford and Cambridge. He has served 4 American presidents in the White House and the Department of State and is an expert on U.S. foreign policy, national security policy, China, and Anglo-American relations. Another seminar that both Halper and Dearlove were affiliated with has been the subject of news reports. On December 17, 2016, journalists Lydia Wilgress and Luke Heighton wrote in the Telegraph, "It has been more than 70 years since a ring of Cambridge spies infiltrated British intelligence so they could pass on crucial information to the Soviets. This time, it is not a spy ring at the center of intrigue, but rather suggestions that Kremlin operatives may be targeting a seminar program." So there has been back and forth on this entire issue, and much of it has been kept out of the public news, at least over here in the States. It is not publicly known if Dearlove or Halper have ever been employed or associated directly with Hackloyd. Each did have connections, however, to principals in the firm. Dearlove certainly knows Sir Ian Lobban, who is serving member of the CSI Advisory Board. Lobban is also both an advisory board member of Hackloyd as well as Hackloyd Cyber, an affiliated enterprise which in the company's words provides insight and practical advice to help business leaders understand and effectively manage the cyber risks facing their organizations, to help investors identify and capture opportunities around the cybersecurity. GCHQ is Britain's equivalent of America's NSA. From its headquarters, known as the Donut, whose shape and immense size was later replicated in the construction of the central building in Apple Park, GCHQ monitors signals intelligence, which is composed of communications between persons' comment and electronic signals. GCHQ is also charged with information insurance, IA, in order to protect the integrity and availability of information generated by Britain's government and military. Lobban's biography, as relayed by Hackloyd Cyber, notes that he is the former director of GCHQ, where he spearheaded the election of UK's first 2 national cybersecurity strategies before moving to the private sector in 2014. In addition to advising our clients on managing cyber risk, he holds a visiting professorship at King's College London and was member of the expert panel for Australia's 2016 cybersecurity strategy. Lobban became a member of GCHQ board in 2001. This would have brought him into attention of Dearlove. Just as CIA works closely with NSA, so does MI6 with GCHQ. It is of note, therefore, that Lobban's successor, Robert Hannigan, who assumed office in 2014, served but 3 years. It has been speculated that his resignation was, at least in part, tied to errancies concerning GCHQ's role in the inception of FBI's counterintelligence investigation involving the Trump campaign. An article published by The Guardian on April 13, 2017 asserted that, according to one account, GCHQ's then head Robert Hannigan passed material in summer 2016 to CIA Chief John Brennan. Luke Harding of The Guardian expounded on his exchange in November 15, 2017, writing, "The summer GCHQ then head Robert Hannigan flew to the U.S. to personally brief Chief John Brennan." Okay, this is November 15, 2017. The matter was, and it's claiming that it would happen in the summer, so 2017. The matter was deemed so important that it was handled at a direct level, face-to-face, between the 2 agency chiefs. James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, there you go. ODNI was involved. Later confirmed the sensitive stream intelligence from Europe. So ODNI was involved. That means he is over all 17 intelligence agencies. After a slow start, Brennan used the GCHQ information and other tip-offs to launch a major interagency investigation. Meanwhile, the FBI was receiving disturbing warnings from Steele. So, extremely interesting that we would see things like Edward Snowden being employed by the CIA and being placed in the NSA as a contractor as early as 2012. That's very interesting information that it seems to lend credibility to the fact that these operations were begun much earlier for much different purposes than just for the election. But that may have been the target. The transference seems not to have occurred within the NSA, which is the direct American counterpart to the GCHQ. It is therefore relevant to note that Clapper and Brennan, a one-time supporter of the Communist Party, have been conspicuous in their enunciation of a vehement hatred for Donald Trump, and I might add, their request to President Obama to have Mike Rogers, Admiral Mike Rogers of the NSA, fired, but they couldn't find cause. In this, they have matched former FBI Director James Comey, who had also acknowledged a flirtation with communism while in his 20s. So now they've got Brennan and Comey flirtatious with communism, and Clapper, a very dark symbol, having worked for SRA. You go look up and see where SRA's affinities were. Now, they've just been purchased out by Global Dynamics, so it makes it tougher to research them. And they just keep changing their names and changing the names, swallowing each other up, and that is the way that they remain hidden. They morph, they change, they blend, they dwell together in the darkness. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that this media organization, Disobedient Media, has done a very thorough job at outing this entire escapade, even to the point of going back and naming the links and the connections between all these disparate characters. Now, the one that has escaped review is one that I would like to concentrate on briefly, because this person is I believe, is a pivotal element in all this, yet remains shrouded in the darkness. Louis Sussman, President Obama's ambassador to the United Kingdom, serves on Hackloyd's and Hackloyd Cyber's advisory boards. Finally, the former Minister for Foreign Affairs and High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, Alexander Downer, served on Hackloyd's advisory board. According to a report by Charles Miranda published by the News in Australia's network. So Sussman, let's see if I have anything on Sussman. I'm going to stop the share here for a second, see if I have any articles on Mr. Sussman. He's searching. He is searching. Okay, I'm not seeing an article right off, but I know that I have some materials on Sussman here. Okay, back with you. Found that article here. Let's see if we can get that shared there. Okay, let's scroll up to the top here. This is Louis B. Sussman, born November 19, 1937, is an American lawyer, retired investment banker, and the former United States ambassador to the United Kingdom, nominated by President Barack Obama. He was confirmed by the Senate on July 10, 2009, and sworn in by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Okay. Sussman served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom from 2009 to 2013. He has been a long-time and prolific fundraiser of Democratic Party candidates, including Obama and 2004 presidential nominee John Kerry. So he has been a long-time prolific fundraiser for the Democratic Party candidates, including Obama in 2004 and, Obama and 2004 presidential nominee John Kerry. So this is a character that needs to be mentioned along with these other folks, because he is the fundraiser. He is the one that's behind the scenes that nobody ever talks about. So let's go through and look at some of these documents that we've got. Dances with. In criminal trials, the rule for prosecuting and defending lawyers is the same. Never ask a witness a question unless you already know the answer. The corollary rule for defending lawyers is, if the answer to your question will incriminate your client, don't ask it, and hope the prosecutor fails to do his job. Glenn Simpson, a former employee of Wall Street Journal in New York, is currently on trial in the U.S. for having fabricated a dossier of allegations of Russian misconduct, bribes, sex, blackmail, hacking, involving President Donald Trump and circulating them to the press. The objective was to damage Trump's candidacy before the election of November 8, 2016. Simpson was called to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on August 22, 2017, then the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence on November 8th, and again on November 14, 2017. So far, Simpson's veracity and business conduct face nothing more than the court of public opinion. He has not yet been charged with the criminal or civil offenses that will happen if the evidence materializes that Simpson has been lying. Now, I'm going to readjust my hypothesis just recently made, because it just came to my brain housing group that, to me, the proper way to keep ourselves in that 6 degrees of separation, which seems that's their standard mechanism, their standard modus operandi, their standard operating procedure, is to remain 6 degrees of separation from the actual black ops, or from the potentially illicit activity, or from the appearance of impropriety. I would suggest that perhaps Hackloit hired Steele to go and compose whatever was necessary to damage Trump's presidency, and in so doing, Steele may have employed other businesses to develop that dossier. That seems to me the appropriate connection here, and I'm going to make that a hypothesis, but again, that is my opinion. That is, in my opinion, in my brain housing group, it seems that the evidence points to a marriage between those in Hackloit and Steele, and that Steele would not have been involved in this unless contacted by someone, let's say like Halper or Dearlove, someone that he knew previously from his previous performance. Otherwise, why would he be involved in this? Someone would have to have contacted him to employ his services. Now, that seems to me that the group that would have employed his services would have been at Hackloit, or perhaps at the ambassador level, but we shall see. Again, my opinion, it's yet to be threshed out, but I do want to lay that down, because that's the evidence I'm going to be looking for. Now, it'll be tough to get, because these folks are very, very well concealed and hidden. Simpson's collaborator in the dossier and his business partner, Christopher Steele, is facing trial in London High Court, charged with libels he and Simpson published in their dossier. Together, they are material witnesses in 2 federal U.S. court trials for defamation, one in Miami and one in New York. If they perjure themselves giving evidence in those cases, they are likely to face criminal indictments. If they tell the truth, they are likely to face fresh defamation proceedings. Perhaps a civil racketeering suit for fraud, maybe a false statement prosecution under the U.S. Criminal Code. One question for them is as obvious as its answer. Why do an American ex-journalist of U.S. national security and an ex-British intelligence agent go to for sources on Russia undercover operations outside Russia in general, the U.S. in particular? Answer. First, their friends and contacts from Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Second, their friends and contacts from Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6, as their UK counterpart is known. Why then did 22 congressmen, the members of the House Intelligence Committee, who were subpoenaed Simpson for interview, fail to pursue what information he and Steele received either directly from the CIA or indirectly through British intelligence? The answer no one in the U.S. wants to say aloud is the possibility that it was the CIA which provided Simpson and Steele with names and source materials for their dossier, creating the evidence of a Russian plot against the U.S. election and generating evidence of Russian operations. If that is what happened, then Simpson and Steele were participants in a false flag CIA operation in U.S. politics. And that goes to that hypothesis that I've just laid down. You know, you start to get into British operatives and their daughter being poisoned, as maybe being the source for this information, and further cooperation, or the only remaining doorway to corroborating this information. So, you know, you have to do away with loose ends, right? The isn't idle speculation has been under investigation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation since Simpson and Steele decided in mid-2016 to go to the FBI and request an investigation, and then told American press to get the FBI to confirm it was investigating. At the fresh request this month from the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the FBI is still investigating. Simpson's appearance at the House Intelligence Committee was the sequel to this testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Those are the Simpsons' three lawyers. The transcripts of the House Intelligence Committee were released last Thursday. Simpson's first appearance was on November 8th and can be read in full here. Simpson's lawyer did all the talking. Simpson said nothing, pleading the U.S. Constitution Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. Although his lawyers repeatedly claimed during the earlier Senate committee hearing that Simpson would testify voluntarily, the House committee recorded that Simpson was compelled to testify. Our record today will reflect that you have been compelled to appear today pursuant to a subpoena issued on October 4, 2017. Simpson then told the committee through his lawyers that he would read. See, this is a game that they play, folks, and we need to be aware of this game, that if they're subpoenaed, then the person can claim the fifth. If the person has come in voluntarily, they can't claim the fifth. But because they're being subpoenaed, if they were going to testify voluntarily, they testify voluntarily. So why even show up? So they play this game where they throw out a subpoena there so that you can claim the fifth. The resulted in an agreement for Simpson to testify on the subpoena, but on terms his lawyer said would limit the scope of the questions which he would agree to answer. Steele, according to the November 8th transcript, and was summoned to testify, a British citizen with whom in Berkshire, an office in London, he refused, and the committee recorded his non-cooperation and non-testimony. Republicans outnumbered Democrats in the House committee 13-9. Just 5 Republican members are at Simpson's November 14th appearance, 7 Democrats. The Republican committee chairman. Now that's strange, right? If they outnumber the Democrats on that committee, why did only 5 of them show up? So that there's a majority of Democrats doing the inquisition. This is just getting really strange when you see the behavior on both parts of these committees. There is something they are looking to conceal with all gusto. The second was a bombshell. Oh, there are 2 references in the committee transcript to the CIA. One was a passing remark to imply the Russians cannot breaking the CIA, so instead you're breaking into, places where an open society leaves open. The second was a bombshell. It dropped during questioning by Congressman Thomas Rooney Wright, a third-term Republican representative from Florida with a career as an Army lawyer. Rooney asked Simpson, "Do you or anyone else independently verify or corroborate any information in the dossier?" Simpson replied by saying, "Yes, well, numerous things in the dossier have been verified. I don't have access to the intelligence or law enforcement information that I see made reference to. But, things like, the Russian government has been investigating Hillary Clinton and has a lot of information about her." Then Simpson contradicted himself, disclosing what he had just denied. When the original memos came into saying that the Kremlin was mounting a specific operation to get Donald Trump elected president, that was not what the intelligence community was saying. The intelligence committee was saying they are just seeking to disrupt our election and our political process, and that this is a sort of just a generally nihilistic, troublemaking operation. And Chris turned out to be right. It was specifically designed to elect Donald Trump. So, yeah, let the cat out of the bag. That they had known all along that there was an objective to either get Trump elected or to make him fail. Rooney then asked what contact had made with the CIA or any other intelligence officials. Simpson claimed he didn't understand the question at first, and then he stumbled. Once Simpson was concealing in the two pauses reported in the transcript as hyphens, Rooney did not realize. Simpson was implying that no one from Fusion GPS, his consulting company, had been in contact with the CIA, nor him personally. But Simpson left open that Steele had been in contact with the CIA. Rooney followed with a question about anyone, but that was so imprecise. Simpson recovered his confidence to say no, that was a cover-up, and the House Intelligence Committee let it drop noiselessly. So what we've got here, folks, is we've got, they are covering up, and we, oftentimes we say that the cover-up is sometimes worse than the actual event. But what they're covering up is they're covering up the fact that potentially these private intelligence organizations and the actual intelligence organizations of both of our countries were involved in creation of this material. Point blank. They don't want to admit it, but that's what it looks like hiding behind the scenes. Let's see. Hackloyd has offices and clients around the globe. Originally opened in '95 by several former MI6 agents, including prior head Sir Richard Dearlove. Hackloyd was renamed to Holding Game Group Limited in 2011. Core services offered by Hackloyd are corporate espionage and opposition research. And the reason why they're trying to take the Hackloyd name away is because Hackloyd was one of those members that was alive in the late 1580s or 1560s to 1580s and started the whole progress of spreading British Empire around the world through these corporations. He was one of those members that was the the founding member of the Virginia Corporation, the Massachusetts. He was involved in that entire transition of spreading British Empire throughout the world. That's why they use the Hackloyd name. The shadowy security firm sells competitive intelligence to corporate clients throughout the use of placed operatives. Spooks for hire should be engraved on Hackloyd's own front door. I described Hackloyd as a cross between Fusion GPS and Stratfor. Stratfor is the Austin, Texas-based Alex Jones intelligence firm connected to Mossad and the CIA. The work product of Christopher Steele's Trump Russia dossier is one example of services that Hackloyd provides to international clients. Steele worked for competitor Orbis, which is like Hackloyd. Hackloyd's own internal advisory board has been populated by several notorious chaps in recent years. The Australian diplomat Alexander Downer, Joseph Mifsud, and U.S. Ambassador Louis Sussman are high-profile individuals connected to Hackloyd. Downer helped organize $25 million payment to the Clinton Foundation. Downer was directly involved with Stefan Halper, George Papadopoulos, London pub crawl affair. Downer gained international notoriety in 2004 when he was caught spying on one country while serving as UN peace envoy from yet another country. Obama's Spygate seems to have reunited the band of global spies. Former U.S. Ambassador to the UK was Louis Sussman. Louis has dutifully earned his nickname as the vacuum cleaner. Sussman is famous for sucking out money from one source and funneling it out to another. Louis has been a huge fundraiser for BHO, JK, and HRC. FBI Peter Strzok went to London on August 3rd, 2016 to meet with Ambassador Downer. The coordination of these foreign intelligence components were synced at the top of the DOJ and final approval always by BHO. Well, that's kind of drawing a really clear picture, a full, clear, round picture that this is all tied together and that this was all orchestrated from both sides of the pond, and we don't know exactly where the brainchild started up. Now, we may know, but we do know the components and the members now, and we are quickly tying together all of these relationships. And as Chris is doing so well at Disobedient Media, and others are doing so well around the world, what we've seen is pictures like this showing up. This is Hackloyd's New York office, which is 2 blocks away from Trump Tower. And this is John Brennan at Hackloyd New York office. Now, you tell me, can you deny a relationship at this point? Can you deny that you know anything about Hackloyd or have been 2 blocks away from Trump Tower? when supposed spy efforts are being undertaken? Okay, the Center for European Reform. So what is the EU dream and who does it serve? If their ignorance, the average Brit has blown away with the wind-holding trust that the British establishment have only the interests in British culture and morality as their prime motive. Little did they know, yet after Brexit, they are beginning to see the fact the European Union is not its own monster, that even after the vote to leave EU, politicians are dragging their feet, awaiting the next big global disaster so they can revoke the vote under some form of national security issue. Direct involvement in all things domestic by corporate state, which is physical representation of the central banks, can be seen in part in the form of Hackloyd, a UK-US cooperative intelligence arm and offshoot of the MI6. One after aspect of Central for European Reform suggests by the activities of several members is to manipulate British democracy through public diplomacy. The UK government's PD is now run by CER's Ian Hargraves. MI6 offshoot Hackloyd had the CER Baroness Smith on its board. As has been noted in Private Eye, Mayday worked at LWT under John Burt and Madelson, a career Foreign Office official. He is the special advisor to CER's Carl Bildt. Maclay was also an early, Maclay was also an early member of BAP and is involved in Hackloyd, the strategic intelligence firm, many of whose directors were formerly senior figures in MI6. Sir Anthony Hammond, the former Treasury solicitor who conducted the official inquiry into the Hinduja passport affairs and led Mendelsohn off the hook, has a salaried position as an official legal advisor to Hackloyd. Yet more insight into the fact the committee controls the EU superstate comes from the trustee of Dulverton Trust, a high-level charity which, though such operations of the trust-held trust, mandated by David Cameron, are now in control of all things poverty with food banks and food voucher insurance. Mr. Christopher Wills, chairman. Mr. Christopher Wills has 12,500 shares in the private intelligence outfit Hackloyd and Company Limited. Hackloyd is a British intelligence agency. Hackloyd's Christopher James wrote to Enron's Jeff Skilling in an apparent follow-up to the email in August of that year, 2001. James expanded on what Hackloyd could offer. Your office has asked me to outline Hackloyd services rather than fall back on the usual corporate information that we have sent to your people previously. I would say simply this: Hackloyd is what you make of it. Places an unparalleled private intelligence network at the personal disposal of senior commercial officials. And one more very sinister fact in relation to the operation, it connects with Kissinger and McClarty Associates. McClarty Associates. Who went to work for McClarty Associates after they left office? Well, none other than ODNI Negroponte. The Center for European Reform, CER, and British Crown and Commonwealth brings together anti-Atlanticist, New Labour, neoliberal, and neoconservative elements in a well-funded and promoted EU military-industrial lobby. It aims to influence organizations such as the European Defence Agency and others and open the defence market. Backers include Shell, Lockheed Martin, BP, and JP Morgan. What it should really be viewed as is an adjunct to the New Labour, particularly in connection to Peter Mendelssohn's and David Miliband. The Center states that it is a think tank devoted to improving the quality of debate on the European Union. It is a forum for people with ideas from Britain and across the continent to discuss the many political, economic, and social challenges facing Europe. It seems to work with similar bodies in other European countries, North America, and elsewhere in the world. The CER makes a point of bringing together people from the worlds of politics and business. Most of our meetings and seminars are by invitation only, they say, to ensure a high-level debate. Its main areas of interest are European Union budget, policies, foreign policy, reforming the EU's institutions, justice and home affairs, economics and finance, energy and environment, education and research, the Euro security and defense policy, enlargement specifically of Turkey, Neighborhood Policy, Transatlantic Relations, Russia, China, the Middle East, and Arab Reform Initiative. The Arab Reform Initiative describes itself as a consortium of 15 key policy research centers for the Arab world, with partners from Europe and the United States working to mobilize Arab research capacity to advance knowledge and promote a homegrown program for democratic reform. The U.S. partner here is the U.S. Middle East Project under the guidance of an international board chaired by General Retired Brent Scowcroft. That includes Carla A. Hills, Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, the President's Homeland Security Advisor Council, Lee E. H. Hamilton of the FBI, CIA's Advisory Panel, Ephraim Halevi, the former head of Mossad, Sam Nunn, chairman of the board of the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, Brent Scowcroft, who coined the term the New World Order and is vice chairman of Kissinger and Associates Incorporated, and the chairman of President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board under the President George W. Bush, and also a board member of the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the Atlantic Council of the United States. The Arab Reform Initiatives run by Basma Kadmani, the program advisor of the Ford Foundation in Cairo and the advisor of the Oxford Research Group, the CER, are also partners in the New Atlantic Initiative, which involves several neoconservative organizations such as the Project for the New American Century and is a spin-off from the Institute of European Defense and Strategic Studies funded by the American Enterprise Institute. The CER's Charles Grant launched his Healing Transatlantic Rift as a New Atlantic Initiative event at the AEI Wohlstetter Conference Center, named after the arch-neoconservative Albert Wohlstetter, in September 12, 2003, introduced by Radek Sikorsky. A significant CER presence can be seen at the International Conference relaunching the Transatlantic Partnership organized by the Aspen Institute Italia and New Atlantic Initiative, with decidedly neoconservative orientation and sponsored by the NATO Public Diplomacy Division and American Embassy in Rome. According to CER's 2007 report, it was founded at the annual British-German Königswinter Conference in 1996 by David Miliband and Nick Butler, then a senior figure at BP and a key figure in setting up British-American project, which is overseen by Paul Wolfowitz and CR's Lord George Robinson. The main administrators of the centers have been Charles Grant and Mark Leonard, and the center's advisory board overlaps with those of think tanks such as Demos and Foreign Policy Center. It has acted as a venue for the promotion of neoliberalism and neoconservatism, specifically in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq. Although it is a European focus, it follows in a long line of elite transatlantic security and defense networks to form a component of a complex mediation of U.S. policy positions in relation to NATO and the other institutions. In 1995, as the CER was being assembled, it was rumored that Lord Gilmore, head of the Foreign Commonwealth Office, would run it while working for Tony Blair. The Independent described the CER as Mr. Blair's private think tank on Europe and noted that playing key roles in the center's establishment are Jonathan Powell and David Miliband. Mr. Blair's head of research, Peter Mandelson, MP, Labor principal spin doctor, has also been among those who have helped the new body to birth. Gilmore, who had joined the Prudential Assurance Vickers and was senior advisor to BZW, was quoted as saying the center would involve young people, not the hoary old usuals. We're going to engage in serious discussion, not the exchanges of habu, which too often take place. But Gilmore seems to have backed out because the CER was attached to a political party, but appeared in the run-up to its launch a year later. Just as several trustees of CERs joined the Blair court in its early days, Lord Simon, for example, so too did some of CER administrators, such as CER's treasurer, Julian Eccles, who became a special advisor, having previously been a public affairs consultant with the International Public Relations Consultancy, Hill and Knowlton, specializing in broadcasting, louder, and IT issues. Folks, what I am seeing over and over and over and over again, repeated as a consistent theme, is that these members of politics, academia, intelligence, military, and these huge corporations, mainly in oil and other resources, have joined together to orchestrate and navigate the direction of the world. And this is another piece of evidence that that all of that has been orchestrated, and that Hillary Clinton winning was orchestrated because that was their potential outcome of one world government was anticipated through her presidency. And that's why she is bemoaning it now, because she continues to realize that she was the linchpin that was broken. Career member of the British Diplomatic Service, Foreign Affairs Advisor to John Major from 91 to 94, Chair of the Joint Intelligence Committee, which overseen information from MI5, MI6, DIS, GCHQ, Political Director of FCO, IISS with Blix above, and also a Harkness Fellow, Governor to the Ditchley Foundation and the BBC. Documents such the 2005, a compact between the United States and Europe, signatories Dame Pauline Novell-Jones and others, proposed that the United States and the European Union shall support the establishment of an independent foundation for democracy in the Middle East and jointly contribute $100 million a year over the next 5 years to its activities. So they're making their own decisions for government. They're not consulting the people. They have determined that they are an empire, and they're going to manipulate the world through the hands of empire, and they're going to use these intelligence agencies in order to bring about everything that they expected to bring about. And so we need to understand that this is not just a small effort by a few rogue agents or a few rogue people. This is a huge segment of our ruling political classes and political families and ambassadors and intelligence agents and former military, and they're all cooperating to bring about this one world government that is centered around the empire in Britain and specifically the EU. So that's why they can't let you leave the EU, their UK. They will not let you leave because this is their plan. And Britain is the linchpin. And so the linchpins are beginning to fall out of the machinery, and that is what's bringing them to utter and absolute crisis. Because what do they do? What can they do? What will they do is what we need to understand. Now, the money is the next thing that we need to follow, and I'm going to come in with another segment because it's going to be reasonably lengthy regarding the hidden money. When we are looking into hidden money, our minds think of Switzerland and the privacy of banking in Switzerland. Let me stop this share for a moment. But the privacy in banking is a small creature compared to the truly nefarious acts that we're going to discuss, which are the blind trusts. A blind trust, let's see, in a bank, when you have secrecy of banking, you have an account. Somebody keeps an account and you keep their information private. In a trust, you set up a trust and nobody knows who's in the trust but you and them. And that's it. And there's no secrecy. You just set up trusts, and trusts are automatically secret, and that's just the way they are. So you can claim, like, let me just use for example, like the UK claims that they don't do private banking and they swear against private banking, but they, in effect, them and their crown colonies hold some 40% of the current blind trusts in the world. So I appreciate you coming to visit a recap of previously unrecorded shows in Powerful Words, and I believe that this information is pivotal to our understanding and our further investigation. I thank you for the opportunity to present this material, and I welcome any questions, I welcome any revisions, I welcome any additions through your own research. I really do appreciate and honor your capacity and participation in this effort to awake the world to the nefarious efforts of global empire. If I may, I'd like to offer a prayer in our exit. Precious Heavenly Father, we come to you today. We're so thankful and grateful that you have given us the opportunity to become awake, Lord, that you have intervened in this world, and you have given us soldiers and leaders in this country to thresh out these dark and nefarious efforts to overtake our sovereign nation. Lord, we ask that if it be your will to please set us free, Lord, to intervene and to nullify their efforts, Lord, and confuse their efforts and make them fight amongst themselves and blind them and blind their intelligence services, Lord, that we might, the people that are trying to bring this country back into its own sovereignty may walk among them and not be seen. Father, I ask you to protect the folks out here who are investigating these issues, Lord, and give them peace, give them some sense of understanding of the victory that awaits us. We thank you and we praise you, and we ask all these things in your precious name, Lord Jesus. Amen. So I do appreciate your time, folks. Thank you so much for joining with me. Powerful Words with Caleb. We are on Saturdays. That's 9 to 12 Mountain Standard Time, 11 to 2 Eastern. And I look forward to seeing you at the time. And as I said, they're not being recorded, so I will be trying to do a recap throughout the week so that we can get these issues out there recorded, so that you can laugh at me, so that you can come and visit with me and say, "Man, that guy is just crazy, and the things he says is just they're just out of this world." When you got a planet like this, everything's outside of the world. So love you folks. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'm going to end this meeting and have a joyous afternoon.